And the blank faces, umpteen number of times I have seen. In the class of younger students, in the class of older students, in the class of IAS mid-term training program at Massoud, everywhere it is something. Listening is not done. And therefore, something above the shoulder is not being used. Now, this is not the time when I should tell that something above the shoulder should be used. And therefore, I corrected from east to west. Today, we are in a research domain which Samar will explain everything because he has gone through every sentence, every page of the book which he and Professor Thorat have edited. It's something which is a monumental thing in social science research, and everyone should have it, should read it, and should find out where are we going. And what I said yesterday was, ask a question to you. Have I added anything incremental to the knowledge? Incremental in the sense, have I got something which I did not know earlier? With these words, I thank you. And I thank Professor Mishra for putting me in this.
No, I just wanted to show all of you that Professor Thorat and Dr. Samarana, they were generals. But the person who commanded,
thank you for saying
this. All the time seeing, because let me tell you, I think I understand, they are most indisciplined people. In the sense that they don't believe in timelines. They never believe in timelines. And if that's the case, one person who disciplined 29 indisciplined people and four people who are helping them, that was Dr. Vishnu. So I just want to tell you that all of us should also, now times have changed. Yesterday scholars would have behaved like that, but tomorrow's scholar would have to be a very different one. Using timeline and doing things before the timeline. On that note, again we will be on the
Thank you very much for this, and it's a great pleasure to be here again. And I'm always kind of beginning to get embarrassed by the compliments that get showered on me, most of which is undeserving. Let me tell you, I continue to remain students of both the gentlemen here and perhaps few others who might be in the room and I'm not able to see currently. And many people who are attending this social science conference. Before I begin saying what I have to say, I must also say that what I am going to do is to present the work carried out by eminent scholars under the leadership, active leadership of Professor Deshpande here. He was the one who, in the process of driving everybody, has probably ended up making more enemies than friends in the scholars community.
That was in the right way.
Yes, indeed. But trying to get a work done by a work of this significance, I don't know if you've seen the book, but just for your information so that you're familiar with the cover, this is the book that we are talking about. This is the book that I'm going to share the findings of. This book actually has been it's been carried out in a period of less than a year. And as I said, I don't know of anybody except Professor Deshpande who could have driven this work in such a short period of time. I cannot be more grateful to you, sir, for this work. More than 30 top social scientists from this country have contributed chapters in this book. These social scientists belong to more than 10 separate different disciplines. They come from 10 different states of this country, 10 different institutions of this country, under the guidance of a peer review committee, which itself was a very high-powered group of people that ICSSR put together. And most of the work in this book is based on primary research. So it's very original. It has not been done before, which has indeed been a surprise to me, I must say. When we began this project, I already thought that, on a work that we were wanting to launch, there must be already a lot of work done in the last 40, 50 years, especially because we've had several committees. But it's only when we actually began to put it all together, it did surprise me, and I know that several others, that very little evidence existed on the status of social science research. A lot of it was scattered in different committee reports. A lot of it was also in the form of anecdotes and experiences of people, as opposed to what we would in social science call as evidence. So in that sense, it's quite a path-breaking work that has happened. I have not done it. It's been done by more than 30 social science researchers from various disciplines. In this process, not only new data has been collected, but also new methodologies have been developed, new methods have been developed. And all of this you will see when you happen to go through at least a few chapters of this book, because it's a very comprehensive compilation of what indeed constitutes the entire gamut of what we call as social sciences. This is not to say that this is exhaustive in any way. There are several topics that still have not been touched in this book, but that's the nature of research. There are plenty of research questions that have emerged as a result of the work that has been done in this work. And in that process, I also want to, even though Professor Thorat is not here, I want to acknowledge and deeply appreciate and also share my very personal honor at having been associated with this project, in particular with Professor Thorat. He's been a mentor, guide, and of course the driving force, the driving energy behind all of this, including this entire book has been funded wholly by ICSSR, and that I think is a commendable work. I know the amount of effort that he's had to put in to get it all done. So sorry about this long preface, but it is important for you to know what goes behind publication of this kind of a volume, so that you appreciate some of the things that I'll share with you. As I said, I'm just a messenger. I'm carrying to you the messages, the conclusions, the findings of the book and the chapters that are there in this book. Let me begin, therefore, with the first slide. As Professor Deshpande himself said, there is cause for hope. So I don't want to begin on a note of challenges in social science. I want to share with you so that you know. I'm sure many of you already must be aware of it. Social science research indeed got the kind of importance that it deserved right from the time India became independent. There's a full-fledged chapter on the historical development of social science research policy in this country. Although there's not been a specific policy on social science research as such, it's been scattered across various policies, various documents. But nonetheless, if you pull it all together, you can see that the early planners, the early policy makers actually recognized and acknowledged and did something about setting up institutions to promote social science research in this country. Unfortunately, over a period of time, that has undergone a change. So, formation of, good morning sir, please. Formation of ICSSR itself was a major landmark in the in the way social science research got promotion in this country. There was an institutional setup. If you also look at the ICSSR supported institutions, and there are 28 or 29 of them currently, IPE, which is hosting this, is itself a center of excellence recognized by ICSSR, and they have also contributed a chapter to this. Now, in terms of volume of research output, India continues to rank among the top 15 countries in the world, and that's no mean achievement. So it's a fairly large volume of work that gets produced from this country. But I'm afraid I thought it would be useful for us to get a realistic sense of where we are currently, so that we know what are the lacunas and what is the direction in which we need to move collectively and we need to contribute to this. So there are challenges, and I'll particularly talk about 8 of them. Each one is captured in one slide. First, as was referred to particularly by Dr. Reena Marwa yesterday, you might recall, and a few other speakers, inadequate funding. You don't need to take notes. All of these slides I'm going to make available for your use. So don't worry about taking notes from the slides. It will all be there. The first important thing to note is funding. Unfortunately, the amount of funding that is made available for social science research in this country is abysmal. It's pathetic. And I'm dismayed, I'm disappointed, but I'm not ashamed to say that even as a social scientist and somebody who's, who works in an organization, and I work with a Canadian organization called International Development Research Center. We are the largest funder of social science research in the world. We are also the largest funder of social science research in India. Am I proud of it? No. You know why? Research is a public good. And by that nature, it should be publicly funded. Not funded by donors, not funded by international agencies. We are there, we catalyze research. We are always there to fill in gaps. We are there to help, take next steps in promoting social science research. We are there as interlocutors trying to bring in the best practices, good practices from all over the world, share it so that we learn. In a global world, it doesn't matter where the ideas come from. What matters is if the ideas are good and if they are workable in our context. That's what matters. That's the role that we would like to play. Unfortunately, in most of the developing countries, we continue to remain stuck in providing more and more funding. And there's always a greater demand for funding. On average, sir, I get 10 research proposals every week for funding from senior research people just in India. Quite honestly, of which, and I hope I can share this here very honestly, 8 of them are not got funding because the quality is, I'm afraid, not very good. Again, something that Professor Hangu was referring to, he was lamenting the falling quality of research among scholars, particularly in the newer generation. We still have, the way I've begun to see, sitting from where I do, we have top scholars at the absolute top of the spectrum. Then the missing middle is very, very evident. The missing middle that exists in this, and there's a variety of reasons, and we can talk about it. But just on inadequate funding, there's some data. I'm not going to take you through all of the data, but it's there for you to see and appreciate that this kind of funding is very poor. Just to give you a scale of what I mean by funding from IDRC as opposed to funding by Government of India. You can see in 2010-11, and this by the way was a chapter written by ISEC in Bangalore. Professor Deshpande has been the director of that institution not too long ago. In 2010-11, which is the latest year for which data could be collected for all of the states and the union, the total amount of social science research funding, excluding funding for census, which is not really social science, and one could argue that's a lot of data collection. That was 486 crores only. Let me tell you, the amount of funding that one program of IDRC does, which I manage for Asia in India, is more than half of this per year. And I'm talking about one program. Entire IDRC funding is more than what all of the states and union provides for scholars for social science research in this country. That's pathetic. That's a shame. The MHRD, the Ministry of Human Resource Development Review Committee in 2011 recommended increase in funding from 700 crores to 1,854 crores in the current financial year, with an annual corpus of 200 crores. How much of that has materialized? I don't know exact figures, but I know that the total amount of funding for ICSSR is still less than about 300 crores. It has significantly improved, thanks partly to this committee and thanks also to the leadership of Professor Thorat. But it's still significantly short of what has been the recommendation of the Government of India set up committee itself. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge even though we have a huge amount of volume of research output, in 1995, for instance, the production of social science research in India was higher than China and Brazil. In 2007, China has overtaken India in terms of volumes. So even though we are ranked as 13th in terms of the volume of research that we produce, just by that scale, that parameter alone, we are slipping. That's not a good sign. We need to do something about it. This, by the way, is not a data that I picked up from our study. It's been it's picked up from a study done by I'll just mention. It's a study done by Gupta, Dhawan, and Singh. It's quoted in the when you see the slides, it's there. So don't worry about taking notes. So there is a clear need for increasing funding to social sciences. There is a clear need for increase in number of social science researchers, and there is a clear need for improvement in the capability of researchers in universities and research institutes, as Professor Hanglu was reminding yesterday. And as I said, the quality of research proposals that we get is by and large not exactly something to be proud of. Again, Professor Hanglu was talking about it, particularly yesterday, focus on the elected themes. Majority, if you were to draw the graph of the volume along the disciplines in which the work is produced, you will see that there is a huge skewness in that graph. It's all skewed towards few disciplines, and even within few disciplines, it's within few sub-disciplines within each discipline. So typically, as you know, I'll not surprise any of you, typically economics, history, sociology, education, political science are the ones which are seeing the highest amount of publications. Almost all other areas in social sciences, they have very, very little production happening. Even within economics or in sociology, if you disaggregate it within each discipline across sub-disciplines, it's a few sub-disciplines that take the lion's share. Majority of them are languishing. They are not, nobody is ready to pick them up. So the imbalances are deep even within disciplines. The research that spans cross-country comparisons are very limited. And that is worrying. That's worrying because if the purpose of social science research is not only to produce theory, but also to produce policy-relevant research and to address the problems of society, we have to be coming together more than we have done in the past. Across disciplines, not only across sub-disciplines, but across disciplines. I remember there was a quick seminar, the EU-India seminar, sir, Professor Mishra, you were there. You had mentioned how when there's a seminar of organic chemistry, people who teach inorganic chemistry do not join these seminars. That's the level of silos that we have brought ourselves into. Clearly, if we want to work on issues of climate change, we want to work on issues of migration, if we want to understand how artificial intelligence is going to change the way our jobs are going to get created tomorrow, my job is going to get affected. No single discipline, and I say it with absolute confidence, no single discipline can provide a comprehensive response to these kind of questions. We have to come together, not only across social sciences, but leaping beyond social sciences and trying to embrace technology. Technology provides us the techniques, it provides us some technical solutions to the problem, but social sciences provides us the North Star, the guiding pole, the values that helps us define which technology to choose, why to choose them, what norms in societies will get affected, and how values need to be preserved. These are the roles of these two broad areas of sciences. They play very, very important, specific, unique roles. So it's no longer about natural sciences versus social sciences. One thought that I shared yesterday, I'm just elaborating. It's about how we come together so that we get the best of technology and we employ it in context in a manner such that the choices of technology, which is a political decision, It's a behavioral decision. That's not a decision that natural sciences are equipped to take. That's a decision that social sciences can and should take. And which is where it's important to vet them, to bring them together. There's no other way we can understand how artificial intelligence will affect the jobs that you will very shortly be in the labor market. How are your jobs going to be created? How will it be affected? There is no other way in which it could be understood. We are talking about artificial intelligence. There is already a leap in that technology which has happened, which is quantum physics. I mean, if you begin to see how quantum physics is going to affect intrusion into your privacy, intrusion in your own life, not only about what you do, but also what you think, it's scary. It's scary. The shower cap that some of you use or will probably use at some time will have the capability to read your mind while you are taking bath. You will think it's great. Think about it for a moment. It can be very, very scary for somebody to begin to put all of this data and collect it. And so what you are thinking is now read by somebody else using technology. Now technology allows that. Technology allows cloning. I mean today, not today, but this year is the 20th year of Dolly the sheep, the first sheep that was cloned 20 years ago in 1996. That sheep has been doing very well, very healthy. It's been alive. So we have the technology to clone human beings. But should we do that? What are the ethical questions that are raised in doing this? That's a social science question. No natural science can answer that question. But natural sciences help us provide the new frontiers towards which have to come together with social sciences to help us understand some of the challenges that we face. One of the other things, coming back to the neglected themes, was there's very little by way of theorization of Indian reality. And it's amazing how Professor Bungulu touched upon almost each of these points yesterday in his brief remarks. He did talk about how, our preoccupation as a community of scholars has been on applying Western theories, Western concepts, Western tools to indigenous realities. Whereas at the same time, he made a plea how it is important to actually reverse this. Think of developing theories, developing tools, methods, methodologies picked up from our indigenous contexts, and then take it forward, then try and theorize them, then try and come with, with some kind of a broader theory. Unfortunately, what we learn from this research is indeed that is the case, and indeed that's something which is not really done in Indian context. As I said, one of these studies here is very importantly giving us data on the state of understaffing, both at the level of faculty as well as at the level of PhD scholars in social sciences. I don't know what is the average number of faculty here in Osmania University in the social sciences department, but I would presume that it is one of the leading central universities, and the average number of social science faculty would be significantly more than 7, which is the average number of social science faculty across the country in all of the central and state universities. State universities actually fare worse. Private universities are a little better, but then private universities, very little research happens, and whatever happens is very commercial. So it is research driven by markets as opposed to research driven by values or driven by the need for us to go beyond the instrumentality of social science and look at how social science can strengthen the values which are dear to us as a society. If we also go to look at, this study looks not only at the universities but also looks at think tanks, and it collected data for a large number of think tanks, 148 think tanks, which is not a very large number for the size of a country or size of India. That also had on average 7 faculty in each of the think tanks. And again, what I said about neglected themes, skewed focus on disciplines, economics, sociology, political science taking the lion's share, is exactly true also in think tanks. History, sociology, anthropology, political science, economics takes the lion's share. Others are barely represented. 116 of the 148 think tanks for which data was available had less than 10 faculty. And only 13 think tanks had more than 20 faculty, and again, mostly in economics. And of course, there was also a disparity in the PhD scholars and courses across disciplines and regions. In the Northeastern region, for instance, hardly any institute which provides PhD scholars or PhD studies at that level. Now, we know that understaffing is a problem not only because of the context within the social science community, but also what's happened outside. And let me just highlight three key things. I think, and I was having an excellent conversation yesterday and today morning with Professor Deshpande about how the values have undergone a change in our society. The economic structure and the values have definitely changed in the last 10, 15, 20 years significantly. I mean, if somebody had actually slept 20 years ago and were to wake up today, I don't think that person will be able to recognize the country that they live simply carrying on mobile. Everything is available at their fingertips. So increased competition from commercial research. So research done by consultants, which is unfortunately most of it is masquerading as social science research, is one problem in this context. Second is, of course, increased competition from better pay masters who are largely in the technology and financial sectors, and why not? And then, very importantly, the value, which is about, the nobility of profession of teaching and research has certainly taken a beating. It's all about how much money I have and what is it that I can buy. What cars I own, what wealth I have, what are the address of my house, where I live. It's very little, increasingly, about who I am, what values I represent. And I think it's important to keep that moral compass, even as we want to succeed. And why not? There's nothing bad about succeeding, there's nothing bad about earning more money. But if we start doing it at the cost of, or we start looking at values and success defined in a capitalistic sense as trade-offs, there is a problem. That's not what social science has taught us. That's not what the SDGs, the development goals are all about. As a humanity, collective humanity, we have committed to 17 goals, which are very, very ambitious. Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations. And they have value as central to all the goals that we collectively have agreed to aspire for. So let's live up to something that we've already signed up for. Moving on, yet another challenge in the paper is making government research institutes more research intensive. Yesterday, we had Dr. Kalyan Chakravarti from TRI, which is one of the government-funded research and training agency on environmental sciences. Correct me if I'm wrong. I was, and what he said exactly confirmed what we already have in the by way of evidence. He said that his aspiration as a director for that institute is to make it into a research institute, because that is a training institute. They typically provide training and only training to government officials, which is exactly what came out from this research. Of the total 311 research institutes in the country for which data was collected, 1/3 are government institutes which are managed by ministries, and their focus is on education, rural development, and tribal problems. Their main activity, unfortunately, remains almost only training. Now, this is worrying for two reasons. One, they sit on huge infrastructure. They have huge resources. And in a community where resources are lacking, where infrastructure is in short supply, it's a waste of those resources and infrastructure to be not making best use for research purposes. That's one. There's another more important reason. And that's something which comes out strengthened also by a work that we have done in IDRC, what we call as policy community survey, where we surveyed the demand side with the policy making community across all of Asia, also in other countries, Latin America, Africa. It's all there on our website. If you're interested, you can see that. What came out is the policymakers everywhere in South Asia, in each country of South Asia, said unanimously that the one institution that they turn to for evidence and they value the research conducted, it is independent think tanks. They value its research very highly. They value the research of individual researchers who have huge credibility very highly. So we went ahead and asked them, so do you use it? And their response was no. So then who do you use? I mean, ideally you would expect, if I value something higher than the rest, how do I know? My revealed preferences only known by how I make the choice. Unfortunately, the policymakers end up, for all of their evidence, all of their research, they go to ministry-funded research institutes. There's plenty of reasons, but this is not the time and I want to go into it. But that's the second reason why it's worrying. If these are institutes, ministry-funded think tanks, which are largely used for policy making in the country, and these are the institutes where evidence tells hardly any research takes place, and we had anecdotal evidence yesterday, no research takes place, it is worrying. No wonder policy making is in shambles. Going on, sorry, it may appear a bit disjointed. It's not joined up as a story, but I want to make sure that I give you a kind of a bird's eye view of the rich information and rich analysis that is all contained in this book. Promoting international collaboration for research. Now, there's a clear shift happening towards more interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary themes. This book itself is a product of a multidisciplinary initiative, not interdisciplinary, but certainly multidisciplinary. Now, in this, the chapter that I'm talking about, of the 31,000 odd articles in social sciences which were published during 2008 to 2014, share of pure social sciences was 52% higher. But those written in conjunction with engineering sciences was 27%. Good news. And those written with health and allied disciplines was 6%. So you can see that there are social scientists amongst us who are reaching beyond the social science community, going beyond the disciplines and publishing. And one of the things that also comes out is there's a very close correlation between good research quality and international interdisciplinary collaboration. It's no surprise. If indeed you want policy uptake at the least of the work that you do, it has to be a cross-collaboration exercise. A single disciplinary work is less likely to succeed both in its instrumental value of providing support for research, but also in, it's very useful to develop, and that there is a use, don't get me wrong. I'm not at all demeaning the role of working and strengthening and deepening of disciplines. That's what, unless disciplines are strong, you can't have cross-disciplinary strength. So they are important. But it's time that we began to look beyond our own disciplines. The sad news is that this trend in this period seemed to decline, 2008 to 2014. That needs to change. There's also a very clear indication, and I can tell you from IDRC point of view, ceteris paribus, given everything else, we always prefer proposals which come from a consortium of multiple disciplines represented, or consortiums that are collaboration across disciplines. Now, one kind of worrying feature which again was being referred to yesterday by several speakers is the research quality, which clearly needs to improve. There is no doubt about it. Even though, I'll just pick out, you have the numbers here and I'm not going to repeat it, but I want to share a few numbers which I picked up from the book today, which is not on the slide at the moment. So of the 21,351 journal articles which were published between 2010 and 2014 in India, 61% articles had no citation at all. 85% of the articles had less than 1% average citation per year. So in other words, only 15% had more than one average citation per year. And if you look at citations, so that's from the point of view of quality, citation as an index. But I'll come to the way we assess quality in a moment. The interesting thing though, sir, is that when you look at quality from the point of view of its use in public policy making or elsewhere, so how many scholars, how many people all over the world are accessing your research? Not necessarily for citation, maybe for leisure reading, maybe for their own work in industry, wherever. So the indicator that was used for this study is Google hits, Google Scholar hits. How many Google Scholar hits you get? It's not citation at all, but it gives you a sense of how many people are reading your stuff. There the situation is much better. So only 12% of the articles had 0 Google hits, and only 38% had less than 1 Google hit on average. 62% of the articles had actually more than 1 Google hit. So people are reading. People are looking forward to reading what we produce. But it's not getting cited. Now there are various reasons. Of course, quality of research is one. But there are also reasons related to how many journals are indexed in international databases. That's an important point. If you look at the journals that are produced from India, only 17% are online. In this day and age, quite honestly, if you're expecting somebody from Brazil to come and visit the library of Osmania University in order to access a Telangana paper, my best wishes to you. It's not going to happen. Your journal, whether it's from IP or wherever, has to be online if you want it accessed, if you want people to be reading. So in that sense, and it's a caveat to the point about research quality. So, before we start kind of jumping around and thinking that all of the research quality is good, I think it's important to moderate that view by 2 or 3 caveats. So that's one. The second is the indexing in international database. And it's interesting that of the 1,992 Indian journals which were produced in the period 2000 to 2015, 50 years, only 7%, so only 144 of these articles, these journals were actually indexed in international database. Now, obviously, people who are looking for citations and accessing international database have access only to 7% of Indian journals. Rest 93%, regardless of their quality, and some of them are very, very good quality, are just not seen. If you're not visible, you're not known, you're not cited. That's not necessarily poor quality, but there is some lesson to be learned here. That's where technology plays a role. That's where interdisciplinarity also comes in. Discipline-wise, interestingly, multidisciplinary articles and economics had the highest indexing in international database. But other subjects did not. Let me move on to my last point, which is about improving policy relevance of social science research. And the paper done by Institute of Economic Growth and CES here in Hyderabad. So Institute of Economic Growth did it for the union government, and CES Hyderabad here did it for the state government here. So I just want to tell you the highlights of this. There's a lot of data, and these are all primary survey work which has been done. Amazing new research methodology. Yes, there are, this methodology is not perfect, but the first time it's been developed to try and understand how do you assess policy relevance of the work. So, the first thing that they found out is that there is a considerable presence of social science research studies in policy documents of union ministries, and there are 4 ministries that they have picked up. Typically these ministries, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Women and Child Development, and Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. These are 4 ministries which typically use or expected to use most of the social science research. which is why they were picked up at the union level. And what they found is that there is a considerable presence of social science research studies in policy documents of these union ministries as well as of 5-year plans of the Planning Commission, which is now DPI. So that's the good news. The bad part of the news is that even though social science research has found a lot of resonance in these documents, in decision making, their role is very, very limited. Of the 884 references to social science research in 11th and 12th 5-year plan, well, there are 884 references, which is a significant number. But these are references in government documents and typically used for context analysis, evaluation, analysis, understanding the designing. But when it comes to actual decision making, which is where the working groups play a very important role, if you look at the 123 working groups of 12th 5-year plan, it had 2,668 members, and 41% each came from government officials and private or NGOs. 13% came from government think tanks, the ones where no research happens. Only 5% came from ICSSR institutes. And this ratio was quite similar in 11th 5-year plan. So it clearly tells you that we play an important role. We play a role in laying out the framework. We play a role in explaining, in sharing insights about the nature of the problem and nature of possible solutions. However, we are not used at the time that decisions need to be made on policy, about policy design, etc. We can discuss it in time. At the state level, again, pretty much reflecting similar impressions. Policy-driven research, and I want to kind of distinguish between these two terms that the study has used. So policy-driven research is research which is typically commissioned by policymakers itself. So the government gives you a grant, gives you a project, expects you to do a research and tell them the conclusions. That is more likely to succeed than research-driven policy. I don't think it's unexpected to, or it's a big surprise in any way. Majority of the social science researchers and policymakers also believe that the quality of social science research in India is between poor to moderate. 80% of them said this. This is a random sample. Commercialization of research, as I said, consulting. I can tell you, we receive all of this all the time. I mean, the way consulting is masquerading itself as research agencies is quite worrying. The kind of data, it's more about how you present rather than what you present, and that's what is kind of it seems is selling more than what the stuff is constituted of. There is inherent difficulties and complexities involved in the research to policy dialogue. So the use of research into policy making is a very complex, messy, partly visible, partly not visible, partly documented, partly not documentable relationships. And it's not a linear one-way street. It's a circular causation, and part of it was shared by, for instance, Dr. Mohan yesterday from Nepal was talking about all the different circles, etc. There are inherent difficulties and there are complexities, and that's also acknowledged in this study. And this study very importantly points out the need for improved communication of research. So it's no longer important to do well what you want to do. It's equally, sometimes more important to be able to say briefly, cogently, and in a summary form what you want to say. So how you say is sometimes more, at least equally important than what you say. It's important to learn as budding researchers, as people who are, who will be in the labor market not too long from now. So it's not just about the communication; it's also about the formats that you use. So this was my last slide. Let me just conclude by quoting Wittrock, and I think it's important to understand that in a way and I firmly believe, sir, from my own perspective, looking as a funding agency for research, this work and this body of evidence comes at a very, very opportune moment. And I tell you why. The International Social Science Research, their own report, and I'm going to just pick up a few quotes from there to share with you how it is important. Never before have the social sciences been so influential. And the report says, today, no public policy can be developed, no market interaction can occur, and no statement in the public sphere can be made that does not refer explicitly or implicitly to the findings and concepts of social and human sciences. The wickedness of modern challenges, encapsulated, for instance, in the Sustainable Development Goals, strongly remind us that the social science needs to return to the larger purpose and work towards finding the truth in its entirety. And in that sense, I'm again quoting a Danish social geographer who's currently a professor in St. Business School at Oxford. The purpose of social science, he says, is not to develop theory, but to contribute to society's practical rationality in elucidating where we are, where we want to go, and what is desirable according to diverse sets of values and interests. And as Professor Alcott had said in 1953, it is easier to smash an atom than smash prejudice. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this has been useful.